The second half of the 80s in Japan, as we remember, is a time of economic growth, in response to which automakers expanded their lines with premium models. Honda did not stand aside either, despite the fact that the company already had a flagship designed to master the funds of the wealthy population and compete with European classmates overseas. So in 1989, the Vigor presented here debuted, and with it the twin Inspire. Strictly speaking, this brand name appeared earlier. In 1981, the first generation Vigor was introduced. In 1985, the second. However, at their core, those sedans and hatchbacks were slightly turned Accords, that is, inexpensive cars, only richer packaged. The third generation was created specifically for tight wallets and actually played on the same field with Legend. By the way, until 1991, the double was called the Accord Inspire, and from the same year, its sales began in North America as the Acura Vigor. As you can see, the differences between the models were insignificant and unprincipled. The bumper lights, the radiator grille on the Vigor, moved in front of the fog lights as part of the front lighting. At first, the Inspire's remaining Accord name indicated that these business-class sedans were based on the platform of the popular model. True, in order to get them, the Accord, which did not differ in modest dimensions, had an additional 85mm stretched wheelbase. An impressive 2,805mm came out. Even the Legend of the first generation, the situation was corrected on the second, was 45mm shorter in this size. Like, say, the Crown, and the Markobrasny and rear-wheel drive Nissan of this class in that time. It would be chic with such a base to place the engine transversely and, in terms of rear passenger accommodation, to find something like a long version, which German sedans already had. But after all, in Honda, you see, they never followed the beaten paths. The engineers didn't use either the Accord 4s or the V-shaped 6s from the Legend. Although, it would seem, take it and put it. In 1989, another unit suddenly surfaced at the company, an inline 5 G20A with a volume of 2 liters, which was located longitudinally. Engine and transmission. Its appearance is attributed to the Honda racing program, according to which the Japanese supplied engines to McLaren, and Prost and Senna became champions with them more than once. Recall that then the Formula One regulations assumed the use of a V10 with a volume of 3.5 liters. Here, they say, they cut off a half from the championship V-shaped 10s and got a row 5. Like it or not, it is not known for certain, but it is possible that Honda used common molds for casting the block. And in principle, the logic of the Japanese, who had a choice of engines, is not entirely clear. Nevertheless, for a pair of twin models, a little later, Ascot/Raffaga were equipped with the G-Series, they unexpectedly designed a new unusual unit, and at the same time remained true to the front-wheel drive. How was the supply of torque to the wheels implemented? In this video, everything is explained in detail and competently. Well, in short, the box through the shaft was docked with the gearbox mounted on the engine block. From him, the left-wheel drive was open. The right one is through the pallet and the block. In addition, the power plant was noticeably shifted to the right in the direction of travel and tilted in the same direction. In 1992, the 2.5-liter G25A was introduced with a capacity of 190 horsepower versus 160 for the G20A. Its cylinder diameter has been increased, the piston stroke is longer. The rest of the motor has become a copy of the younger unit. The same timing mechanism with a single camshaft, belt drive and 4 valves per cylinder, whose gaps are adjusted with a screwdriver and a wrench. The same system for changing the geometry of the intake tract, see video, and the absence of VTEC. Unless the balance shaft, driven by a separate timing belt, was removed on the G25A. But a similar procedure was carried out in 1992 for the 2.0-liter 5. From now on, only the engine mounts were engaged in vibration damping. The only restyling of models falls on the same year. The difference is the traditional Japanese minimum. Most notable are the headlights. Salon and options. The names of the kits and their essence have changed. Before the update, Vigor could not have a radio only, alloy wheels, central locking, rear disc brakes. Accord Inspire was somewhat richer. And in 1992, the 2.0-liter Vigor, not to mention the car with the G25A, got it all. That single equipment was called 20G, and that's what we have. What is not in comparison with the maximum speed on a 2.5-liter sedan? ABS, traction control, 2 frontal airbags, sunroof, wing on the trunk lid, cruise control, and electric front seats. After all, the Vigor could have been upholstered in leather. Wooden inserts and stitching on the front panel, which is mandatory for all trim levels, are responsible for the premium in the cabin. Behind, no service, except for the ashtray. Actually, Vigor/Inspire were not transport for top management, and mid-level managers were not supposed to have any option, like their own climate, music, electric drives. But look at the legroom. Apparently, already in the 80s, despite the longitudinal arrangement of the power unit, the company adhered to the ideology of less space for mechanisms, more for passengers. In any case, in direct classmates with rear-wheel drive, it is noticeably closer, and only Crown provided passengers with equivalent living space. In front of the cabin, in addition to the specified attributes of the good life, there are, so to speak, their own chips that distinguished Honda from competitors. For example, the watch adjustment buttons are hidden behind the cover. Climate control is divided into two blocks. The temperature is set from one, the other, also covered by a transparent curtain, controls the distribution of airflows and the fan speed. The window controls are original in Vigor. In the instrument cluster, along with traditional scales, there is an open door signaling device, each separately, including the trunk lid. Little things, but they add up to the big picture. And in general, the design of the dashboard, in comparison with Japanese classmates or the same original Accord, looks more modern and presentable. In general, not for the 1989 model year. It remains to check how this overgrowth of its segment rides. And first of all, to be surprised, where are the vibrations from the poorly balanced 5? After all, it is known that it has uncompensated moments from the forces of inertia, and therefore a unit with such a number and arrangement of cylinders did not receive distribution at one time. In this case, nothing hints that they are not repaid. Are the bearings or balance shaft working? The car was made in 1992, and it would be safe to talk about the first ones, but the engine with the box has already changed. It is likely that the motor went with the balancer. But the sound of the G20A is uncharacteristic this time for Honda, as a manufacturer of engines that have always worked hard. This one chirps softly and seemingly harmlessly. In addition, it starts up perfectly in cold weather, which a little later became almost an exception for the brand. Nevertheless, the characteristics are in the traditions of the company. Let's remember how much inline 6s were then developed. It's more correct to compare the 5 with them after all. The base ones were 125, 135 forces, and only special versions 1G and RB20, atmospheric, forced up to 150 to 155 horses. Honda has 160 horsepower right away. And the point. They also pull in their own way. If you don't rush anywhere, you won't really understand anything. Rides and rides, the imagination is not amazing, but it is worth making Vigor move more intensively, and the first impression is disappointment. Where are these, Morris? In what kind of torque converter oil did their hooves slip? You just have to wait a couple of seconds. When the tachometer needle reaches 2,500 RPM, the engine noticeably comes to life. This is not like the explosion that Honda's legendary 4s of the B and H series showed, VTEC, no. And yet you feel how the 5 begins to breathe in full force, without losing the rhythm up to more than 7,000 revolutions. G20A is clearly riding. To get along with this in the city, you must not neglect the sports mode of the automatic, which keeps lower gears longer. Everything is fine on the track anyway. After 120 km/h and further, Vigor accelerations are easier than other Japanese of that era with engines of the same volume. Before restyling, Vigor/Inspire could be equipped not only with stampings, wheels with a bore diameter of 14 inches. Then the sedans were still transferred to the 15th discs, but even after that, as you understand, the tire size did not look serious by today's standards.